you're very welcome to another episode of the South Tip Arts Podcast. Now, Paddy Goes to Petra is the latest play by one of the country's best young playwrights. Áine Ryan, who hails from Upperchurch in Tipperary and whose earlier works include the critically acclaimed Up the Hill Jackie, which she wrote and starred in with her sister, and Kitty in the Lane, which was a powerful one-woman piece, drew inspiration from her travels across the Middle East to create a powerful drama. The play follows the story of a middle-aged farmer called Paddy, who's dealing with profound grief following the unexpected loss of his son. He decides to travel to the ancient city of Petra, hoping to escape the heartache which is consuming his life. The play stars Cork actor Brendan Dunlea, and the premiere will take place on Saturday the 29th of February at 8 p.m. in the Source Arts Centre in Thurles. The tickets are available from the box office on 0504 90204 and www.thesourceartscentre.ie. Earlier in the week, Áine popped in for a chat to tell me all about her travels in Jordan and the inspiration for Paddy Goes to Petra. Áine Ryan, you're really very welcome to the South Tip Arts Podcast. We met a few years ago, back in the heady days of when I was in Tip FM, which seems like an awful long time ago now. At the time, you were working on Up the Hill Jackie with your sister Erin.
Yeah.
And that did really, really well. But you have a new project that is premiering very soon.
Yeah, so I have a new play. It's premiering again at the Source on the 29th of February. So it's called Paddy Goes to Petra. I wrote this play. I actually visited Jordan last year for Christmas between 2018 2019. And I was there for about almost 2 weeks. And I didn't go with the intention of writing a play or anything. I just went for the experience of travelling.
Yeah.
And when I was in Petra, I met some of the local Bedouin, and I found the people from Jordan themselves to be really nice, open, kind, so warm, so much brilliant hospitality. And then when I was sitting in the town Wadi Musa, which is next to Petra, I just had this idea. Obviously, you see loads of couples travelling there and loads of people travelling there, from, let's say, Ireland, England, etc. Yeah. And I just said, how would someone end up here? What would compel them to either visit this place, or how would they imagine if you stayed here for a few weeks? Because I saw a few people in the community, not that many. But
what compelled you to go there?
What compelled me to go there was I was teaching music, so I knew I only had about 3 weeks to go somewhere in between, let's say, September, December, and then a few weeks for the Christmas holidays, and then I'd start teaching music again once the children are back to school. So I said I wanted to go somewhere pretty exotic and somewhere that they didn't really celebrate Christmas, because I didn't want that experience of being stranded on my own over Christmas.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, maybe somewhere relatively close is Jordan.
Yeah.
I'd heard some really good reports about travelling in Jordan from a few friends who had been there. And I just said, you know what, that sounds really, really good. And I could fly there. I have a friend who lives in Bulgaria, so I actually went to meet her first in Bulgaria. And then I flew from there to Jordan for €10.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So then when I saw the flights had actually been a bit more expensive, and then I was debating would I go, because I was like, oh, maybe it's like the Middle East, it might be a bit dangerous.
Yeah.
I'd been to Turkey, but I'd never had experience like Jordan is next to, obviously, Iraq, Syria, all these places. So I was like, what is it actually like? But then when I saw the flight go down to that, I said, this is a sign, I just have to go. So I flew there on the 23rd of December from Bulgaria, and so I was there on Christmas Day and everything, and immediately I stayed with some really these two guys who run this hostel. It's the only hostel in Aqaba, which is the port city. The friendliest guys, they were even WhatsApping me before I got on the plane to go there, saying oh, this is what your taxi should cost to get here.
Brilliant.
Let me know if you any really good English. So it was such a good experience. And they welcomed me I was a member of the family. And then I didn't really know what to expect, but I knew I wanted to go there. But then when I went there, I was blown away by how amazing the culture is. After Petra, which was just absolutely amazing, and obviously was so inspiring that obviously I got to write a play from it. But even Amman, the capital city, I met a lot of other expats that live there. A lot of NGOs, a lot of journalists would be based from there, covering places like Syria, Iraq. Jordan is a very kind of stable country at the moment in terms of the economy, and it's peaceful.
So it's a safe place for them to observe.
So it's a wonderful place to go and experience the Middle Eastern culture, but while feeling like safe. So that's what compelled me to go there. But then that's where the idea came from. How would, like, let's say an Irish farmer end up over here? And so that's kind of how the idea for the play came about. I wanted to write a little bit about an Irish man maybe suffering the loss of a son for a while. And even though obviously I'm not a man, I'm not in my 50s, but I don't know, I wanted, in some ways they're kind of like the most characterised people in Irish history, like the kind of farmer, the ones most deeply rooted in Ireland, a farmer getting money from the land, like looking over the environment, kind of the mainstay of Irish culture and kind of traditional culture. But then to, let's say, transform that man into someone who lives in the Middle East, hangs out with these kind of characters and is actually happy over there. I just wanted to see how could maybe that come to fruition. So obviously I had the backstory then of him losing his son, his wife kind of dragging them travelling all over Europe, anywhere they could kind of get some cheap flights to just go and distract themselves, keep a bit of happiness. It's working for her. His wife is getting a bit of happiness and a bit of, let's say, like peace and getting over some of her grief through this, whereas Paddy doesn't have any of that. No matter where they go, he's like sleeping in the hotel, doesn't want to stray outside. He's just basically so overwhelmed by the whole experience of losing his son that he can't really see much more how much joy is in the world, or like maybe how environment can bring you something different, like give you a new home, a new vibe. But when he goes to Petra, it's the first place that he actually connects somewhere. So that's basically what the play is about like connecting with a new culture, but then realising maybe what you already have back home, and also can you really give up one life and start another, or will you always be responsible for the life you've already created? Like he already has this farm, he already has a wife, he has another daughter, like what can he actually cancel all of this and suddenly leave your life and go somewhere else? So I think that's very interesting. Like I was always interested in people who, for example, my dad would have told me this story about even like a few days ago, but I'd heard it before, about like this man who just suddenly upped and left and moved to England and left his farm and left everything and just went. And I've always been kind of interested in what would be the story of that.
Motivation
and I heard another story about a couple arguing on holidays, and it was kind of, then the wife refused to come home. So she was just like in Spain or somewhere exotic, and like, you know, it was like, I just thought that was brilliant that someone could just say, I'm not coming home. That's it. Like I've dropped. I'm stepping out basically. And then when you give it to an unconventional character, to someone who you might not predict would do something like that, how would that experience be for that person? And how would that experience be for the people who's left behind?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I had a really good time writing the play. It was fun, and I could use obviously my own experiences as well.
Yeah, and I read somewhere that you wrote it with a specific actor in mind.
Exactly. So the actor in it is Brendan Dunlea. He's from Cork. I met Brendan when I was in Edinburgh actually doing Kitty in the Lane, my first play. And we have some mutual friends. So someone had recommended he go see Kitty in the Lane. So afterwards he came up and had introduced and said who he was and who had sent him to see the play. So then he was actually there with a one-man show, not that he had wrote, but that he was performing in. So I went to see that, and I thought he was really, really good actor. So after that, I met him once or twice, I think, again. And then once I'd, let's say, wrote this project, or while I was writing it, I was kind of thinking, how am I going to cast this? Because obviously I wasn't going to be able to play the role myself. So,
which is a departure for you, because everything that you've done today, you've been in it.
Exactly. So it is a departure. Well, one thing I had done I did a year down in Waterford.
You did short film.
Yeah, I did some short films, and I wasn't actually in those. I've done short films as well that I've acted in, but I made 2 short films where actually 3 short films where I wasn't in them and I was just directing. And I feel that if I can write a story where I get to be in it, brilliant. I love to do that. But I feel now I don't always have to be, like, ideas are coming to me, and it's not for me just to act in them. It's like letting the story come through.
It's a totally different experience, self-directing, than trying to direct somebody else.
It's very different, and it's wonderful to be able to have that view, like to be able to watch an actor and know that you can direct them, like you can just have a much clearer vision. Now, like I do believe it's totally possible to self-direct, like that's a skill and you can do that. Like I wouldn't say that you can't, but it is wonderful to be able to actually watch the play being performed with another actor in it, because you do have that vision that you don't really have when you're actually on stage yourself. It just, even the simple things like when is enough time standing in that position, when is time to move, and when you're on stage sometimes you don't have that clarity.
Well, you can't be both at the same time.
Exactly. So it's really wonderful to actually share in the collaborative experience. When I sent it to Brendan, then like I sent him an email telling him about the project, and he read the script and said he'd love to be part of it. So I was delighted with that, and then we've kind of been working together since. And in fairness to Brendan, like he's helped me so much in terms of edit down the script. Just hearing it aloud and having someone else's opinions on it is wonderful. Like, so it's been a really good kind of collaboration. And even now with like just a short period away from the play, like we're still making cuts, and you know that's not possible unless you really have the actor in the room able to kind of inform some of those decisions as well. So it's exciting.
Yeah. Now, to get inside the head of a middle-aged?
Yeah, he's in kind of late 50s.
Man, Irish man.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
It kind of like came to me in his voice, which is weird, because normally I do think it's easy when you kind of write for yourself. You know, when you can write, a young woman, this is my perspective, and someone similar to me would probably have this perspective. But it's also freeing when you're not writing basing on your own opinions. Obviously, my voice is going to come through in the script. And I think that's a good sign of a play when it flows to you easily to begin with. Like sometimes I would be struggling to write a character, even if they're very similar to my own age, my own like kind of personality. But basically, in some of the play, like the son has died unexpectedly, and he dies, not to give too much away, but he dies by suicide, but it's completely unexpected. And I remember when I was much younger watching, I think, an interview on the Late Late Show or something, and it was about interviewing parents and people who said like a relative had died but they had no idea that this was about to come. And I was completely fascinated with that, because I thought like, at least if you knew someone had, you know, issues or was depressed or was struggling, you could offer some help. But how difficult it must be to cope,
and powerlessness,
not knowing, and when there's like no note or nothing, like just wondering, that constant searching, like what could I have done, or was I blind to all of this, and I just thought, when I saw those interviews, I just thought, oh my god, like that must be the hardest thing to live with. Like how do you continue to pick up every day and like try to form a good life for yourself after going through something like that? So I had this kind of, and I think often like for men, I know obviously I'm not a man so I can't relate, but obviously there is that thought of like they're the stronger ones, like they're the ones that kind of keep the money coming in, and they're kind of the people that keep the family afloat, and they're like the pillars of power. But like obviously men are just as vulnerable, and just as they have to cope with this in their own way. So I was kind of really interested in how someone who might be expected to be strong might actually be struggling so much, and like the difficulty that would bring in his life. So from that perspective, I kind of understood the character I wanted to create. Now I haven't had like any personal dealings thankfully with suicide, so it wasn't like I was writing from a very close place, but at the same time, unfortunately, like it's so rampant.
Like every community
it's so rampant, you know, that's the thing.
Is totally connected in some way to
and like especially with Ireland being so small, like you really relate when you hear some stories. Like I do anyway. I'm always thinking, like if I read an article or something, I'm thinking, oh, those people, like how are they. Like you'd be thinking of them afterwards, like, and
how do you cope?
How do you cope? And like everyone is so connected that you can kind of feel the sorrow, and it's such small populations in certain areas anyway that like if for one person to die young or to die at any age, like
it sort of devastates the whole area, doesn't
it? And you're wondering, like, it's such a miracle to actually be born and have a life, and as difficult as life is, like it's such a wonderful thing to experience. And sometimes you're like, how are we creating environments, or like how are we setting up these worlds that people do feel so isolated and do feel that there's no way out, and like why is there all this struggling, you know, how can we correct that? And I think I just was, obviously the sad thing in the play is that it's about, it's not like, unfortunately the act has already happened where the boy has died, but it's about how does someone who, if that has happened to them, how can these people kind of be stronger and help themselves create a life, not a better life, but a life where they still find some meaning and they haven't completely given up on happiness or given up on, you know, continuing to live life in a, get some pleasure from it.
So while it is like heavy subject matter and the start of it, there is kind of redemption for Paddy in it. Like,
definitely. So it's all about, especially in this day and age where we're starting to kind of get fearful of other cultures. Like, as much as globalization is taking place, there still seems to be, with like the various political systems and stuff that are coming into place, like all over the world, like there's an element of fear, you know, there's an element of people are afraid of what other people are going to bring, us and them, exactly. Which is amazing, because when you actually visit other cultures and like see the countries for themselves, you do come back with a completely different perspective in terms of you're like they're so similar. Every family around the world is so similar. Like, whether you be in, everyone has the same hopes and dreams. Everyone really wants is just to be like comfortable and to be able to like have a few little luxuries in life and like kind of be happy in themselves. And like, that's no different whether you go to Russia or like Argentina or Australia or somewhere in the Middle East. But obviously now there's terrorism, there's so many various things that people are starting to be afraid of, like the others, let's say. Now hopefully in Ireland we don't really have it that much, but at the same time I just think that like embracing a new culture, and for this it's like I just enjoyed the contrast of creating someone from Ireland that might be fairly traditional, even though he's a pretty modern man, open. You know, he doesn't really have those kind of prejudgment before he does go to the Middle East. But at the same time, I thought it was great that he could be friends with these Bedouin, like these young men of a completely different culture, and yet like have the crack with them and be finding like, you know,
so they're teaching him essentially like about life.
Exactly. Or he can see all the similarities with his own life and theirs, and just how wonderful the world is in like weaving these tapestries. And maybe if you feel lost from one culture, when you go to another culture, how that can embrace you. And like, it's just amazing how I think the world can offer you such a sanctuary. For example, if I'm in Ireland and I'm like, oh, you know, I need to go somewhere else to kind of free up my mind or something. Now maybe I don't even need to, but sometimes I might have that feeling. But then instantly, if I travel somewhere else, even if it's just to another county or somewhere different, how amazing that is for your mind, that it can kind of cleanse you, and then you come back with a whole new appreciation
of home,
and you can realize how amazing and special home is. But that like the whole world is packed with these amazing people, and there's so many kind of obviously grim and bad news stories, but there's also like so much brilliant things going on around the world, and like so many exciting new cultures that we can all be part of and like participate in. And sometimes it's just embracing it, like getting over your fear and going for it, that like you suddenly are welcome to, you suddenly get to experience these new things.
It sounds brilliant. I can't wait to see it now.
Oh, thanks.
So the Source, you always kind of have your premieres in the Source. And can you give us the date?
So it's on the 29th of February. One night only for now. Obviously the Source is 250 seats, so I like to try and fill it as best I can for one night, see how successful it is, just even see if the play is received well. And then hopefully we'll do a second night if it goes well. But hopefully after that we will try to tour, because the actor is from Cork, you know, he'll have a good audience down there. And I think this play has a lot to offer a lot of different communities around Ireland. So I'm not really looking too far ahead, but obviously my ambition will be to tour it and have the show grow a bit. But for now, just to test it and see how it all goes and give it a good premiere. Obviously I'm from Upperchurch, so the Source is a beautiful venue and an amazing resource for me when I live nearby it, so that's why I try to premiere at the Source.
Always.
So 29th February, 8 p.m. at the Source.
And you can have a look at the Source website if
Yeah,
you want to
so
find out
there's-
the details of
exactly,
that.
yeah.
And tickets are available through there, and you can buy them online and everything.
Yeah, you can buy them online or at the box office there.
One thing I wanted to ask you, just as a one-person show, that makes it very transportable, does it? Like, or
It does, yeah. So
how is it staged?
So we have actually, my dad is actually building the set. So I had to go for quite an abstract set. We wanted originally to set it in a cave, and it's set, we've got kind of various platforms. It's probably not going to make sense when you're listening, like from an audio perspective, but we've got various platforms. So it sets up as if it's kind of an abstract idea of rocks.
Okay, yeah.
But it jumps between Ireland and Jordan.
Okay.
So it's not set in any particular location, really. Like, the location we have is Petra.
I suppose a lot of it is kind of an internal journey, is it?
Yes, exactly. And like, even though it's a one-man play, like, he does play the wife's part, and there's other characters, like there's even the Bedouin themselves. So there's Faraj, Aine, and these are real people I met. Like, I didn't even have to change the names. I just went for it. So the staging is that. And then it's kind of the red rock of Petra, basically. That's the kind of colour scheme.
Yeah.
And then obviously with lights, and I have a lot of Middle Eastern music. So it should be good production.
You will be transported.
Yes, exactly. Definitely. Like, when you hear the music, immediately it just transports you to the Middle East. Yeah, it's amazing what music can do to, like...
Because that whole Bedouin culture, that's just so exotic and beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I got a quote, like, I visited Petra in the winter, obviously over Christmas, and it was very cold and rainy, whereas a lot of people's experiences of Petra is when it's absolutely roasting, like really hot. But I got in this coat like that the Bedouin wear. It's actually from Syria, but it's the exact coat that the Bedouin wear, this very heavy, how would you even describe it? It's just really, it's beautiful. Like, when you see it, it's an amazing costume. So Paddy wears one of those on stage. So he's transported to Jordan as well. In the play.
Well, Áine, it sounds absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to see it.
Thank you,
I'm a
Emer.
big fan anyway. I like everything you do. So
thanks, Emer.
best of luck with it all, and come back anytime.
Thank you, Emer. Thank you so much for your support.
And that's it for another episode of the South Tip Arts Podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to Áine as much as I enjoyed chatting to her. Don't forget that premiere takes place on Saturday the 29th of February at 8 p.m. at the Source Arts Centre. You can check out their website for all the ticket details. If you'd like to get in touch with the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. The email address is southttipartspodcast@gmail.com. That's southttipartspodcast@gmail.com. We'll speak to you all again next time.